What's up, everybody? How are you doing? Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to Casey's Quarantine Corner. Again, this is the live stream that I do separate from my radio program, which starts at 3 o'clock Eastern on 95.3 MNC. Want to thank, again, everybody for joining us. And real quick, prayers going out to William. His dad is having surgery, so we wish you the best of the luck on that and hope that everything happens. I want to remind everybody that you subscribe, you like, you share this video, whatever platform you're on. I would love to grow YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. I mean, really, I want to grow all of them, including Twitter, but my two biggest platforms are Facebook and YouTube. But again, we're shifting to the premium service next week. So one day, you'll get this live stream free, broadcast exactly how it is right now. I'm not exactly sure which day that's going to be. I'm going to look at my metrics and stuff tonight or tomorrow and make that decision and make an announcement for that. As far as the premium service, if you go to caseythehost.podbean.com, in the sidebar on the right-hand side, you'll see premium plans. You can pick one of those plans, and you'll be able to access the other 4 days of live streaming with this content as well as other videos. So I'm able to do live shows, and I'm able to do video content, which will not be live, and stuff that will go on some other social networks. You'll have early access to. Some stuff will be exclusive. You'll also have access to Casey, Coffee with Casey, also the Fake News Flash, which are two syndicated features that I do for my radio show. And all content from 95.3 MNC's radio program from 3 to 6 is going to be free, okay? So it's entirely up to you guys what you decide you want to go ahead and do. And several of you have signed up already. I'm very grateful and thankful for that. Really does help me with the cost of putting on the live stream, and also makes it worthwhile for me to actually do it, since I'm actually getting just a little bit of scratch in the game. All right, so a couple of things that we have to do. I'll look at a couple of questions here first, and then we'll still let people kind of filter in, and then we will get into this microbiologist who had some pretty interesting things to say about the scientists in the Wuhan lab. And I don't have any way of confirming what this guy says, but it's a news report, and he's apparently well-renowned, so it'd be interesting to see what ends up panning out as the evidence continues to mount that this did, in fact, come from a lab, which I told you in mid-January was the case. Sitting in a parking lot with a cigar. I wish I were having a cigar, but the weather people keep getting the weather wrong because the airplanes aren't flying right now. That's what I'm told. What else do we have? Somebody asked about the census questions, and yeah, you've got to fill out the census. This is, every time there's a census, this is a contention. Yes, you're supposed to fill out the census. Yes, I understand why people don't want to, but also, think about it this way too. In the future, as people are looking up their ancestors, and you'll be one of those ancestors, they'll be able to have a lot more information about their genealogy as a result of you filling it out. So, yes, I understand some of the questions in the past. I haven't looked at this year's census yet. They did send it to me the other day. That some of those questions have seemed invasive in the past. I don't know about this year, okay? But yes, you should fill out the census. Yeah, and it doesn't take long. It never does. Never does. Well, yes, Rhonda, this lab did get the grant. In fact, let me pull the grant story up again, because I haven't talked about the grant story in about a week or so. We did talk about the president ending the grant. Come on, where is it? All right, well, there's one article on it. All right, I guess that's the only one that I saved. All right, so let me address the grant situation, okay? Now, if you go back to April 11th, this is the second article that I talked about with the grant. I had talked about a week before that also. The laboratory at the Center of Scrutiny over the Pandemic has been carrying out research on bats from the cave, which scientists believe is the original source of the devastating outbreak. And as we have told you before, going back to mid-January, I was telling you everything about this screams that this came out of a lab, okay? The real question was it a human-engineered virus, or was this just an escape of a natural virus? That's the question that we're trying to determine right now. But it is near universal when you look at the people who matter that they think that this came out of the lab at this point in time. So again, they were sequencing of the COVID-19 genome was traced into bats found in Yunnan's caves. Again, the lab at the center of all of this was studying those bats, okay? So again, all of the evidence points towards this being from the lab. None of the evidence that we have points to it coming from the wet market. None of it, okay? Let's see. Senior government sources said that while the balance of scientific advice was still that the deadly virus was first transmitted to humans from a live animal in Wuhan, this is again on the 11th, that evidence has changed. An accident at the laboratory in the Chinese city was no longer being discounted even by Chinese authorities, okay? Let's see. Does it address the grant here? I thought it did. There we go. Documents obtained by the Daily Mail show the Wuhan Institute of Virology undertook coronavirus experiments on mammals captured more than 1,000 miles away in Yunnan. It was funded by a $3.7 million grant from the U.S. government. Okay, so there's that. Now, this appears to have been research directed at a couple of different things, including possible HIV research. Okay, now again, I'm not really focusing on the grant. Yes, there was a grant from the U.S. government. Yes, there were people in the U.S. government prior to the outbreak who wanted to shut down that research. It didn't happen. And yes, we do have the virus now, and now the president has said that he's going to address that grant here soon. So here's the thing that is being discussed today. Now, you have to understand, I don't know who is and is not famous in the microbiology world, so I'm taking their word for it. But you also have to understand that I have this very tentative type relationship with the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail gets a lot wrong. Okay, so just understand as I cover this that this is an article coming from the Daily Mail. So be somewhat healthily skeptical of it. All right, there's a chance that this is very, very true, and there's a chance that this isn't accurate. All right, and some of that will be on the microbiologist himself and not the Daily Mail. A leading Russian microbiologist. Now, some of you just turned off the stream at that point. You're like, well, if Russians are saying anything, I'm not going to listen to it because, Trump is colluding with Russia and all of that stuff. Which, of course, is nonsense, but Nancy Pelosi is still repeating the debunked claim. She did so last night. All right, so world-renowned expert Professor Petri Shumakov claimed that their aim was to study the pathogenicity of the virus and not with malicious intent to deliberately create a man-made killer. So what he is saying is in the Wuhan lab, they were doing, and I quote, the scientists in Wuhan were doing absolutely crazy things in their laboratory. Now, that's his words, not mine, okay? Take it with a grain of salt until we have this authenticated. But this is in a traditional, establishment media source, so this isn't coming out of like some message forum somewhere. So Professor Chumakov has basically said that they were doing a bunch of nutty things in this Wuhan lab, but they weren't doing it maliciously. They were doing experiments. They were studying the pathogenicity of the virus and other viruses. They weren't trying to create a weapon, okay? But what he says is that they were still doing crazy things there that put us at risk. So he's the chief researcher at the Engelhardt Institute of Molecular Biology in Moscow. He said, in China, scientists at the Wuhan laboratory have been actively involved in the development of various coronavirus variants for over 10 years. Great. Now they're saying that there's possibly 30 strains of COVID-19. Now, whether or not that's true still remains to be seen, but they're saying that they believe it's about 30 different strains. So that's going to make vaccinations and things like that more difficult. Moreover, they did this supposedly not with the aim of creating pathogenic variants, but to study their pathogenicity, okay? So they're not trying to make weapons, they're not trying to make a superbug, they're just trying to study the behavior of viruses. For example, inserts in the genome which gave the virus the ability to infect human cells. Crap, that sucks if that's true. So if this lab in Wuhan and these researchers that are there, although the Wuhan lab is not 10 years old, the current one anyway, but if they were inserting the ability of these viruses to infect humans in the lab, and of course the virus gets out, starts infecting humans, yeah, it's a real problem. That's not exactly what you would want to see in a situation with a lab that the world has already warned us for several years has a huge risk of virus is getting out. So I got the hiccups. Now all of this has been analyzed. The picture of the possible creation of the current coronavirus is slowly emerging. So he told Moscowski Kosmomolet's newspaper, there are several inserts, that is, substitutions of the natural sequence of the genome, which gave it special properties. It is interesting that the Chinese and Americans who worked with them published all their works in the open scientific press. That may be true. I even wonder if this background comes to people very slowly. I think that an investigation will nevertheless be initiated, as a result of which new rules will be developed that regulate the work with the genomes of such dangerous viruses. It is too early to blame anyone, he said. He also went on to say the Chinese scientists created variants of the virus without malicious intent, possibly aiming for an HIV vaccine. Okay. He also he's connected to the Russian Federal Research Center for Research and Development of Immunobiological Preparations. All right, so he's a bigwig apparently in Russia, maybe around the world. So, you have to look at that stuff, and if he's accurate, then possibly with the research grant from the United States, which I believe, as I think it was Kathy said, I believe that does the Obama administration. Not that I'm blaming the Obama administration for all of this. Okay, research is research, but if what he is saying ends up being true, then yeah, we may need to have some different rules on this stuff, because you have these scientists now that have made a virus that wasn't transmittable to humans if what he is alleging is accurate, and that's a real problem, especially considering the globe. And as a result, obviously we've got the pandemic, which I want to throw this out there too. If the data coming out of California is accurate, because I know that the president had, wasn't a great press conference last night. He said a couple of things that I believe he probably shouldn't have said, talking about the second wave won't be that big of a deal. And I know I'm paraphrasing and minimizing what he was actually saying, but it wasn't the best thing to say. But with that, I mean, his press conferences have been very good. They've been very informative, and I think that the world has been more informed as a result of them, in spite of the media not covering a lot of them, particularly CNN. And when you are looking at the possibility of there being a second wave of this virus, if you look at the data from California, it's possible this is the second wave, and it is possible that the second wave is the deadly version of the first wave. And if the data continues to materialize like it is in California, it is entirely possible that this is the second wave of this thing. Now, I don't know if it is, and nobody has made that conclusion yet, but if California had this thing during the last flu season, and they're saying, October, November, and that China may have had this thing in September, if that ends up being accurate as the data continues to come out, well, this may very well be the second wave of that virus, which would kind of hold true with the second wave being a bad one. Now, again, we don't know that. Okay, I'm just throwing it out there that the research in California may suggest that we are already in the second wave of this thing. So, I don't know. Take it for however you want. It's you've got this expert apparently from Russia, and this expert is out there and he's saying, hey, this doesn't look great. They were doing some crazy things. They were inserting these abilities of the virus to jump to human beings and all of that. So if that ends up being, long term, if he's accurate, we need to reevaluate that stuff without a doubt. Did Tim pop on here? I saw somebody say Tim. Hold on a second. Did Tim pop on? I don't see Tim. Holy smokes. What am I... Okay, so producer Tim hopping on here. What am I going to call this segment when quarantine ends? I may never leave quarantine. I've already told John I'm probably never going to come back to the studio. And I'm looking at possibly launching a TV show and additional things here from home. I mean, who knows? Who knows? I have no idea what I'm going to call this, man. I got no idea. If you got some ideas, Tim, you let me know. Oh, man. So a bunch of you hopped on a little bit late, so I just wanted to welcome you aboard. Thank you again for joining us late. So it's been so long since we've talked to Tim. Like, it's been forever. I honestly thought that Tim just, like, I said something and he hated me, and he decided that he wasn't going to communicate with me anymore. I took Tim to a Notre Dame hockey game, and this was nearly a year ago, Tim. Jesus. Nearly a year ago, I took him to a hockey game, and I think I saw him one other time at See Me CNC, and then it was like nothing. I was like, my God, what the heck happened? He disappeared. I must have pissed him off. So good to see you again, or hear from you again anyway. If we can prove that China and the U.S. had the virus way earlier than we thought, does that make all of this social distance shutdown null and void? Yeah, look, it changes everything. And I've kind of talked about this because there's 2 studies in California now. 2. So you got one from Santa Clara, and then you have the one out of USC. And these studies seem to suggest that we had the virus a lot earlier and that a lot more people have developed antibodies on this. And they're able to trace this back to at least October of last year now. China, the research that I talked about yesterday in China seems to suggest that they had it in September. So if that ends up being the case, yes, it's been that long, Tim. Jesus, man. So anyway, if that ends up being the case, then yeah, we might have herd immunity in California. And so if California, which had a particularly bad flu season, had more deaths, more hospitalizations than is average in their last flu season. And remember, somebody reminded me of this yesterday, because I remember I had pneumonia last year. I've never had pneumonia in my entire life. My whole family got pneumonia. Okay, both of my girls got pneumonia. My wife got it. I got it. None of us have ever had pneumonia before. So that all happened. They were closing schools down to do sanitation. Do you remember that? What if that was COVID-19? Now, I'm not saying that it was, but what if it was? What if it was COVID-19 and we all had this last flu season and the first wave just wasn't as bad as the second wave. And now we're in the middle of the second wave, which again kind of flared up in Wuhan and spread everywhere. So there's some real possibility that we are in the second wave, and that places like California that had a particularly bad flu season, that they have herd immunity already. You know, at the end of the day, we have 3 choices, okay? Choice number 1 is to keep doing what we're doing now, which is not sustainable. Choice number 2 is to wait for a vaccine. That's not practical, right? So we have one vaccine that's been in trials for over a month. We've got another vaccine that was announced today, has just started clinical trials. Israel's got a vaccine that they claim is 100% effective. So, you know, we've got these different treatments and vaccines that are out there, but it could be a year, maybe 2, before a vaccine is cleared. And then you have to look at manufacturing being ramped up and mass distribution of the vaccine, okay? So we're looking at 2 or 3 years. So waiting for a vaccine that's in no way, shape, or form is that practical. So we can't do what we're doing now. We can't wait for a vaccine. The only other option is to open up and wait for herd immunity. Now, herd immunity can be ugly, but the virus will burn through a lot quicker. The virus will go away a lot quicker. And then, of course, we'll build up antibodies. So if COVID-19 ends up being a seasonal flu variant, then we're not going to be facing the damage that we're dealing with right now. So we don't have a fourth option at this point in time. So whatever we end up deciding to do right now, the most logical option is to open up. So, you know, how you do that, again, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And there's a lot of states, we'll talk about this today on the radio show, a lot of states have already been cleared for phase 1. And there's some interesting states on that list, no doubt about it. We'll talk about that again at 3 o'clock on 95.3 MNC. Let's see. Yeah, Dean doesn't hang out all that much. He got a new job. He also kind of said that he needed to step away from politics. It was affecting him emotionally, and he wanted to kind of chill out a little bit. So I understand that. Still chat with him occasionally, but you know, we miss Dean. Let's see. Slight headache, scratchy throat for over a week. Well, and Dale, you know, they're thinking that like a quarter of the people who get this virus are asymptomatic. So if that's the case, you know, there's a lot of people who could walk around spreading the virus and they have no symptoms and nobody knows. You know, that's the fear with opening up. Casey, the first week of December, my mother-in-law got an email from a friend of hers in China. She stated in that email that they had been wearing masks for weeks now due to some virus. Well, that would make sense, okay? So we learned about the virus on December 31st. China says the first case was December 19th. However, they've acknowledged that it may be November. They did that, a month ago. Now they're saying it could very well have been September. So that would make sense that they were wearing masks. No vaccine for me. I read an article from a woman who volunteered to be a test subject with the vaccine as it started trials over a month ago. And she said she had no negative side effects whatsoever. So, she kind of gave her whole experience, the whole process of being chosen for it, getting the vaccine, how they're testing her and monitoring her and that sort of thing. She says she's had no negative side effects. So that's good news. Okay, that's very good news. Robert says the Democrats will keep pushing the opening update back. Yes, the Democrats are going to push the opening date until they get it to at least November 4th, because the election is November 3rd. So the goal is to destroy the economy, okay? And I'm not minimizing the virus, but the goal is the political aspect of this. The goal is to destroy the economy, do what you can to push universal basic income, push unemployment. We got a great story about unemployment benefits today on the radio show. And push it back until we can't reopen until after the election, because you get to do all of those things: the economy, unemployment, the voter suppression aspect of it, and not letting people vote from home. You get to do all of that, and then magically on November 4th, they're going to call for the country to open up. So mark my words, that's the goal. Okay, I've seen this pattern way too much. And Dean, look, Dean was understandably very angry, and he had a right to be. And so, it got to a point where he said, I'm going to calm down and I'm going to back away. I wish he were still here. I wish he were still in the audience, but he's doing good. He's got the second gig, and I hope that one day he'll be able to pop in at least a little bit here and there. People in China always wear masks ever since the bird flu. That is true, and they think that that'll become more common here in the United States as well. Let's see. Open up. I have 100% of my elderly relatives willing to go out in public and live their lives. So when we talked about opening up a couple of weeks ago, I think it was on a Friday, most of the people who called were in the risk category, and they said, I don't want my kids and my grandkids' lives to be destroyed here. So yes, I'm at risk. I will take extra precautions, but open the country up. That was consistent when we got those phone calls. Casey, we didn't have HQC in December and January. Now we have the Wuhan Slayer. Yeah, there's that. Let's see. We should have stayed open. Do expert guidelines to minimize, but let the hard antibodies. Well, and here's the thing. So Sweden's really hitting back because Sweden has been catching some flack. Early on, Sweden's doing the exact opposite of what the world is doing. Sweden is allowing herd immunity to happen. They're not closing down. And a lot of people were saying, well, they're doing it. But then the backlash against Sweden happened because they had a death rate that was a little bit higher than some of their neighbors. And so there was a pushback against it. But now Sweden has pushed back against the pushback. I know. And they're saying, hey, the virus is more rapidly going away here than anywhere else in the world. The antibodies are at least in Stockholm, the number of people with antibodies is surging, and the virus appears to have lasted in Sweden less than it is anywhere else in the world. So I'm just telling you what their experts are saying. And I've said from the very beginning, the epidemiologists have basically two theories. One, stay at home, let the virus kind of run out of targets and slow the spread so hospitals aren't overwhelmed. The other one is let the virus burn through and eradicate itself. That's the goal. If it sticks around and doesn't eradicate itself, it'll become a seasonal thing and we'll have the antibodies to deal with it next fall. So those are the two lines of thinking. We did option one because we were really worried about our hospitals. However, our hospitals have not been overwhelmed in the vast majority of places. In fact, hospitals are closing down. Some hospitals were shut down by the government because they have no patients. Other hospitals are financially unable to stay open because they have no patients, while certain hospitals have been tasked with taking only coronavirus patients. And in the meantime, a bunch of hospital staffs all over the country and all over the world have time to do these massive coordinated TikTok videos. So there's a lot of medical infrastructure that needs to be opened back up. The hospitals and doctors in Washington State are basically, they're publicly now urging the governor, Ainsley, to open up the hospitals because he shut them down. So, there's a lot that is not being discussed about what's actually happening with the virus in the country, and it's, again, what the right answer is, I don't entirely know, but we have three options at this point. Do what we're doing now, it's not sustainable. Wait for a vaccine, not practical. Only other option is to get back to work with, precautions. So that's what I'm leaning towards. Let's see, hydroxychloroquine. And this is another thing that's really pissed me off about the press is that hydroxychloroquine, the doctors in the field are the ones telling us that it works. Okay? And the only people who are telling us that it doesn't work are people who have non-peer-reviewed research. Okay? Very limited studies of like 300 people that have not been evaluated. There's real problems with the methodology used, like the latest one that was pushed in Politico here last week. Major methodology problems with that particular study of 340 patients or whatever it is. Meanwhile, you got over 6,200 doctors in 30 countries that have all said in the survey that this is the most effective treatment we have for serious cases. And you've got a lot of doctors, because now the media is still pushing this ventilator thing, you've got a lot of doctors saying ventilators aren't helping, ventilators are hurting. And so a lot of the people who are dying, and this is something that wasn't in that hydroxychloroquine study that just came out, which again is not peer-reviewed, so it's not even a legitimate study at this point in time. They didn't parse out who was on a ventilator and who was not. And that's important because many doctors are telling everybody that the ventilators are making the problem worse. Well, if that's the case, I mean, there's just, unfortunately, I shared a really, did I share this? I don't know if I shared it. There's an article in townhall.com today. Let me pull up the title of this thing. I thought the wording on the title was great. And it was a balanced article. They got some things wrong, but it was a balanced article that was not meant to promote or to dissuade from hydroxychloroquine. But, God, where did it go? The weird politicized war over hydroxychloroquine. Exactly. It makes no sense that people are so viscerally opposed to it, and some people are just viscerally, this is a miracle, somewhere in between, okay? What we know is it's the best effective treatment that we have now for serious cases. There isn't another one. Now, it may not be ideal, but until we have something that works better than hydroxychloroquine, you had better be exhausting all options to save people's lives. And that the media, the U.S. media, has actively campaigned against that. And I want data on how many people who have died, have been on a ventilator, and have been on hydroxychloroquine. And I want them separated out. Who was on a ventilator but didn't get the medicine, who was on a ventilator and did get the medicine, et cetera, okay? So if we could do that, we're going to get much better data, but they just seem like they're not interested in figuring this out, and it's very frustrating. Very, very frustrating. And zinc ain't going to hurt, okay? Is zinc going to protect you against the virus? Probably not. But anything that you do that boosts your immune system, it gives you one extra, weapon in your tool chest to fight off any infection, including this virus. Well, and Dr. Shiva did that too, Rhonda. So you've had several doctors in New York that did that, and Dr. Shiva came out too and also said, yeah, these ventilators are a big issue. And yet I was just looking at it last night. You've got the U.S. media out there telling everybody that we need more ventilators again. We don't need ventilators. We have more than enough ventilators, okay? We don't need any more. Now, that if you want to have them for the strategic, medical supply and stuff like that, yes, I forget what it's called. Then by all means, get them. But right now, you don't need ventilators to treat the virus, okay? And there's too many people telling you stop using ventilators. This 5-year-old girl who died in Michigan was on a ventilator, and I can't find anywhere that she was given hydroxychloroquine. which means she wasn't, because if she was given hydroxychloroquine and she died anyway, the media in Michigan would have been all over that. But, she was on a ventilator for a week and she died. Okay, she's a 5-year-old kid. You have to wonder, did the ventilator contribute to that? I'm not blaming the doctors. I'm not saying that they were negligent. I'm just saying that there's a whole lot of people who are on the front lines treating the virus, actual patients, not in a lab, and they're telling us the ventilators are causing harm. They're telling us that hydroxychloroquine is doing well. It's not ideal, but it's doing well. And if it's the best that we have right now, might as well give it a go. That's the problem. Will it hurt anything to take a small dose of hydroxychloroquine? Most likely no. The problem is that Politico pushed this new study, which huge methodology problems, okay? Very, very small sample size, is not peer-reviewed, all right? So essentially, in medical research terms, this study that everybody talked about this last week is crap, but it's being pushed. And in that study, they said that people who take hydroxychloroquine die in higher numbers than those who don't take it at all. The problem is that they were measuring two different things and they weren't able to compare those two different things. The reason that people were probably dying in higher numbers on hydroxychloroquine is because those were the more severe cases and were more likely to die anyway. Huge methodology problems, not peer-reviewed, flies in the face of numerous peer-reviewed studies from around the world that say the exact opposite about hydroxychloroquine. So if nothing else, yeah, I'm telling you to drink fish tank cleaner, exactly. If nothing else, the research has to happen, okay? But pushing out very small, problematic research studies that are not peer-reviewed and pushing them as fact in the face of peer-reviewed research which shows that hydroxychloroquine is very effective, that's not good. That's not good science. That's not good policy. And it's really dangerous journalism. Very dangerous journalism. But that's what they're doing right now. And that's going to get people killed. Because there's going to be people who look at that. They're going to go, well, if I'm more likely to die on the drug than off of the drug, then put me on a ventilator instead. But that might be what's killing people. So what if the people in that study who died on hydroxychloroquine were also on ventilators? What if? And that wasn't studied at all. So there's real problems with that study. So and it's one of the reasons I haven't gone over it on the show is because, this is a study that would be dismissed by any scientific journal and would be dismissed by any scientific body as not being credible in any other circumstance. And yet it's being pushed as if it were legitimate, should be the Bible of hydroxychloroquine, and that's the issue that I have with it. Let's see. Well, and honestly, I don't care what the World Health Organization says. Whatever the World Health Organization says about this virus, I'm just going to assume the opposite at this point in time. Well, yeah, and that's the deathbed thing, right? Were they too far gone? And maybe it's a population control thing, guys. I don't know that I want to dive necessarily down on that, but if you think there isn't a political angle to all of this, you're a naive fool. I'm sorry you are. And did you guys see my diatribe on Facebook last night? Did you see that? And maybe I shouldn't have written it. I don't know. But I have seen people that I know and that I respect in this industry, and I have watched their brains. And I have a saying, okay? And I know that this kind of comes out of Men in Black. A person is smart, people are panicky creatures, that sort of thing. And I've said it on my show for a long, long, long time. A person is smart, people are dumb, okay? And when you are afraid and you are angry, your brain stops working. You're easily manipulated. Your ability to critically think goes away, all right, when you're scared and you're angry. So the media cycle is always designed to keep you scared and angry so they can push their agenda onto unsuspecting members of the population. It's one of the reasons that gun control is pushed so hard right after a mass shooting. People are more susceptible because they're angry and they're sad. They're more susceptible to being manipulated that way. And the same people polled 3 weeks later change their minds, they calm down, they change their opinion about gun control. So when you see this stuff, It is all designed to push an agenda. And, people are sitting there saying, because, yesterday when the president's like, hey, is it, Dr. Birx, would you say that the virus could come back and not be a big deal? And she said, look, we don't know. She corrected him, okay? The president shouldn't be saying things like that. But she corrected him. Dr. Fauci was asked, and as he has said countless times before, he expects the virus to be back in the fall, all right? And that may or may not happen. We don't know, okay? And the experts have been wrong on this thing from the very beginning, too. But when you are outraged and you are upset that the president would ask a question like that of Dr. Birx, okay, but you're not pissed off that China lied to everybody about this being transmittable from person to person, where the hell is your brain? How is it that ignoring 6,200 doctors in 30 countries saying hydroxychloroquine is the best thing we have for severe cases, how is ignoring that in favor of somebody with a creative writing degree at CNN telling you that taking this drug is not going to help anybody? Not make you angry. I mean, people's anger is completely and utterly misplaced. You've got the media lying about the timeline. The press is lying about what the president did and said back in the early months of or early weeks of this virus. And it's frustrating because we're running around every single day and having to put out fires, okay? Trump-Russia collusion didn't happen. Vladimir Putin doesn't have anything on Trump. Nancy Pelosi last night repeated that lie on national television. That doesn't piss you off? But Trump asking Dr. Birx or being optimistic in a press conference does? I'm sorry, but you are brain dead at that point. You have been whipped up into a frenzy and you are incapable of critical thinking if that's where you're standing on all of this. And it's irritating as hell. Kama says he doesn't trust Fauci. And here's the thing. I don't have a reason not to trust Fauci, but what people have to understand is that Fauci doesn't know what's going to happen. Okay? Yes, he is an expert in his field, and he's one of the most recognized and esteemed experts in that field. Yes, Dr. Birx is basically the same thing, okay? But you have got to accept the fact that they have been wrong about this virus from the very beginning, okay? Now, that's not because they're not brilliant. That's not because they're not good at what they do. Part of that is because the World Health Organization and China straight up lied to them. Yes. Part of it is because they don't have the data to be able to give you an accurate assessment of what's going to happen, okay? They don't know. We're dealing with something that's brand new. And yes, they're the experts, but no, they don't know what's going on, okay? And like I said, it's not meant to be insulting to them. It's not meant to get you to not listen to the experts. You need to listen to Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci every single day. But they are almost as clueless as everybody else on this. They don't know what's going to happen in the fall. They have no idea if the virus is going to come back. They don't even know if the virus is in the first wave right now. Again, the data in California seems to suggest this might be the second wave. We don't know. And if you just accept that they don't know either and take the best advice that they can give you about not spreading the virus anymore, that's okay. But pretending that they're the experts and they're the end-all be-all and they know everything and Trump doesn't know anything, they're always right, Trump is always wrong, or Trump is always right and they're always wrong, that's not going to get you anywhere at all, okay? They're not always right while Trump is always wrong. Trump is not always right while they're always wrong, okay? The truth is somewhere in the middle. None of us have any damned idea what's going on. We are all winging it here. And if you're going to go one extreme or the other, you're not gonna be productive in saving people's lives or making this thing go away. And here's the thing. You have people who are just committed to being on the right for the sake of being on the right, and people are committed to being on the left for the sake of being on the left, and then there are people who are committed to being in the middle for the sake of being in the middle. Each one of those is as dangerous as the other one. Now, I want to remind everybody out there is like, oh, Trump is not an expert. We shouldn't listen to him. We should only listen to Fauci. Fauci told you on March 9th to get on a cruise and go on vacation. Trump told you not to. So who was right there? I'm a dramatic pause, I guess. Honestly, if if we're supposed to listen to Fauci and not listen to Trump, but Fauci admits that Trump was right about the travel ban and Fauci was wrong about the travel ban, wouldn't that seem to suggest that there is a little give a give and play here to listen to both of them? And again, you're dealing with three options. We do what we're doing now, which is unsustainable. We wait for a virus, which is impractical, or we start opening up with precautions. And that's where the president is leaning. That's where Fauci is leaning. That's where Birx is leaning. What's interesting about all of this is that the experts in Trump are more in line than the media keep telling you they are. And oftentimes I've watched the president get attacked for saying things in his press conferences that he was told to say by Dr. Birx, by Dr. Fauci, and by the head of the CDC. So you can't be pissed at him and not be pissed at them. And they were going off of the best information that they had available. And yeah, a lot of that information came from China, the World Health Organization, and it was a lie. So you can't hold it against them that they had bad information and repeated it. They know they have bad information now. So now they're working with newer data. And this data is more accurate, which is allowing them to be better at their job. Okay, but I mean, the idea that Trump is always wrong and Fauci and Birx are always right is so preposterous. And the opposite is as preposterous. Where's the black market barbershop? Yeah, no kidding. Darren says, preach. Leftovers is a really good show. You're probably talking about food, but Leftovers was a HBO show, and I thought it was really good. My wife and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And you'll be confused at times. You will be confused at times, but it will pay off in the end, I promise. I think you could hear your wife and kids. Yeah, you could definitely hear Bree. Bree is not listening to me about being quiet the past 2 days. Bree may get banished to the upstairs floor if she keeps it up. Let's see. Fauci explains too much about the Wuhan lab and it being man-made. During one of the press briefings, it was too strange if you listen. Well, and look, I mean, when Fauci was talking about that, yeah, I mean, we covered that too. I mean, the reality is, Alex has said, I trust Trump's judgment on this. Trump isn't Fauci or Birx's puppet. No. And here's the other thing, Alex. Fauci and Birx are not his puppets. Okay? And they have been relatively in unison with one another from the beginning. So when they were telling him to say things that didn't pan out, he was getting that information from them. And now when he tells you stuff, remember when he was mocked for washing your hands? You remember that? President Trump came out early on. He's like, just wash your hands. Don't breathe on people. Cover your mouth. And they mocked him for it. And now everybody is telling you to do that. Okay? But Trump was mocked for saying that, in spite of it being just flat out common sense anyway, with any infectious disease. Yeah, well, and I have an interesting exchange to go on Warren Murphy's point there about the matches. I have an interesting exchange about Trump with one of the members of the press. And he said, look, if I had testing for everybody and I gave 10 tests to everybody in the country, the media would be asking me where the 11th test is. Now, the president is 100% right about that. And yet you've got, I think it was Jonathan Karl from ABC. He's like, that's not true. We wouldn't do that. Yes, you would. You absolutely would. Why? Because if you get tested, you can still be infected that afternoon after you got a test that said you were negative. So you would have to continuously test people. And that's exactly what the press would be saying. After the 10th test, the president would go, we've tested everybody 10 times. And they would go, yeah, but you can still get infected. The test doesn't mean you're immune. They would absolutely do that. The president's 100% right. Let's see. Yeah, Bree can guest host. Bree gets no more video game time for the rest of the week. Yeah, good luck with that. Let's see. Well, okay, and here's another thing about New York, and I'll take your final questions and comments here. This is another thing about New York. We learned last night that Cuomo was requiring sick elderly people to be sent back to their retirement homes. No wonder the retirement homes ended up being a huge problem in New York. The infected people were required to be sent back to retirement homes where you had all of these other elderly people with secondary illnesses, which became a bloodbath. Okay? And again, this is all stuff that is not Trump's fault. If you look at the way that New York was handled, Cuomo and de Blasio botched this from the very beginning, and that is why New York is so bad. And New York is so much worse than anywhere else in the country. When you look at all of the American data on this virus, if you take New York out of it, America's doing pretty darn good. Is that where Holcomb is leaning? Well, we'll go over, Karen, we're going to go over this today about opening up. Okay, and Holcomb extended it to May 1st. Gretchen Whitmer announced today that she's going to extend it into May, but I fully expect Indiana to start opening up early May. Okay, I would expect that. Casey, see if Fredo will give you tips on how he kept his kids quiet. Yeah. Well, I'm sure he has a much bigger house than I have where the kids are separated out. But, you know, this is another thing that I wrote about last night on Facebook in my diatribe is how can you be pissed off at Trump looking at Dr. Birx and asking that question yesterday and not be pissed off that a member of the news media violated quarantine when he had the virus, put his kids, his wife, another mystery woman at risk, put the general public at risk because he was outside in the general public? How can you be pissed at the president but not pissed at that? And nobody is criticizing him. People want President Trump in jail. People want President Trump impeached for his handling of the virus. And nobody wants Fredo fired? None of it makes sense. It's all bizarro world crap. But that's what happens when you have people who are not looking at this from a practical or reasonable perspective, and it's all tribalism. Let's see. No, they didn't mock it because you're supposed to cough into your elbow. Yeah, I mean, good Lord. Yeah, Dave said Leftovers is a good show. I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. Like I said, you'll be confused for a little while, but it does pay off in the end. All right, last question, comment. Give you 1 minute or so. They got a letter that they can't open? Oh, that is some bull. I did not see that, David. I did not. Okay, I'll look that up. Yeah, the hairdresser and salon thing is crazy. Sneezing into your shirt is better than your elbow. Yep, that's usually what I do if I can. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, go to silverfoxart.com. They do amazing work. We've got some really cool pieces to display for you coming up soon. And in the end screen, as I wrap up the video, you'll see an example of their work on my logo, which is hanging up on a wall and backlit. Looks awesome. Okay, about 1/2 inch thick wood, hand painted, backlighting, just 3-dimensional, awesome, fantastic work. Go to silverfoxart.com. Remember, if you commission a piece with silverfoxart.com, use the promo code BananaFace25 to save yourself some money. And veterans also get 10% off. Use the BananaFace25 coupon code in the subject line of your inquiry. Again, silverfoxart.com. I got to go do the radio show and look forward to seeing all of you here. Don't forget to sign up for the premium plans at caseythehost.podbean.com. You're only going to get one of these shows for free starting next week. So if you want to get other shows and other videos, you're going to have to sign up for the premium plan over at Podbean. Podbean.com, okay? caseythehost.podbean.com. The premium plans are in the right sidebar, okay? So for you, they'll be over in this area here. And it says premium plan. Just pick the one that applies to you, whichever one would be best, okay? Thank you so much. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, all of that. Appreciate the support. Have a wonderful afternoon. We'll talk at you in a few minutes on 95.3 MNC. For those of you who are on Discord, make sure you head over to the Discord server into the live chat channel and hang out with us during the radio show. All right, chat at you guys tomorrow at 2 o'clock.